for Jeff for the invitation. So I'm really glad to be here to present and this keynote, and honored to present the first one this morning. So here today I will focus on showing what we are developing as method in extending the knowledge that we capture in bioinformatics mainly to grasp and help optimize an agricultural sector. I will focus on examples on dairy farms here. And so the summary of the presentation will be as follows. Since it is a keynote, I will try to be the more layman as possible. And I will start by introducing our lab at UCAM and some of the activities that we are doing on agriculture. And I will focus on precision livestock and showing the examples of dairy, mainly focused on welfare, predicting longevity, and also increasing management within farms. So our lab is at UCAM, and we are located just near the hall at the Jazz Center Festival. So if you are just coming to Montreal, so we welcome you to visit the Place des Arts. So we have a nice campus there. Actually, in the summer, we can enjoy a lot of music while we are working. Okay. So mainly our laboratory at UCAM is a multidisciplinary one. So what we want in the laboratory is to compile a group of expertise that can leverage bioinformatics, mainly genomics applications, towards the end users. Different type of end users are there. One is the sector in health, and the other one is the sector in agriculture. So we are fortunate to develop a lot of packages, more than 10 software programs in machine learning and bioinformatics. And we have around 100 scientific papers, and mainly the laboratory is supporting two major projects. One is what Ida mentioned is a bioinformatics services for the Center of Excellence in Research on Orphan Disease. And the second one is leveraging AI and genomics to help the transitions in dairy industries. That is funded by the dairy sector and the NSERC here. So mainly, few words about the Center of Excellence. The official name is CERMO and Fondation Courtois, is providing services throughout all the pipelines in helping scientists to handle studies in orphan disease, going from genetic identifications until the highlight of biomarker and a drug discovery clinical tests. Okay. So we are at GLBIO today. So mainly our work, all of us here are working on bioinformatics. So let me just resume that our job as bioinformaticians in our lab is defined by the four steps that are presented here. First one, we wanted to decode genomes by generating a lot of genomic data, including small RNA, total RNAs, and also working on microbial studies. But by generating all these data, there is a need of effort on integrating the data within the environments of applications. So we are also developing methods that help to mine those complex data and provide the right algorithms for the end users, either in agriculture or in health. Okay. So mainly the talk today, I will focus on 4 main applications. I will start by introducing some of the examples that we are working on in soil and also in wheat regulations. And then I will finish by the dairy sector applications. So we resume our work in the lab by developing algorithms to learn most of the latent variables that can help to improve prediction models. So several tools are developed within the lab. They are divided in 2 categories. First, they are kernels, machine learning models for pathogen detections and analyzing small RNA, total RNA, metabolites data. And we have platforms for pathogen surveillance. And finally, we are doing a lot of work in agriculture. Mainly, we have a wheat regulation projects ongoing and a soil health indicators projects and a graph of project working in dairy. So what is the motivations behind now working in agriculture for us is it is related to the long-term objectives that everyone has, is bringing sustainability within the sector by optimizing the practices. And optimizing the practices could help reduce greenhouse gas and could help maintain sustainability within farms. So one way of doing this is bringing new technologies to the farmers. And those technology could be put in different domains. One is on staple crops, in legume, in vegetables, but there are also a lot of aspects associated to animal productions that need to be handled. So in our lab, what we are trying to do is first help the management of soils by providing better soil monitoring systems, by integrating site-specific crop management. For integrating that site crop management systems, what we are doing is to predict yield productions and yield crop rotations and predict a profit map zone. That profit map zone is really crucial when agricultures are doing rotations within farms. So we are analyzing the data that are multidimensional, taking in different layers, spatial dimensions regarding the multispectral data that are captured from the Sentinel data, and we are integrating that with the soil indicators and the environment to better cluster and identify soil mapping zones that could be profitable and that will be better suitable for improvement in the productions of the agriculture. So since 2015, there are multiple high-resolution satellite images that are out there. So we are capturing this data, integrating them within our systems. So that helps us by using machine learning to predict pasture, potato, soybean, and to use those integration data with the Canadian crop inventory to define specific management zones. Okay. Then in parallel, or maybe before that, we were working on also optimizing a specific crop. A specific crop is better understanding how wheat is regulated, so based on field conditions. So we develop a set of tools that can help to highlight the biomolecules that are associated to different factors that are present within the soil. Let's say the presence of aluminum, the presence of dryness, and to monitor how those effects could lead to less productions or better production of the different type of crops. So we highlighted in the lab a set of 125 new small molecules that are microRNAs related, and also 69 new siRNAs that are pretty associated to the regulations of the wheat. So new studies are now coming out associated to that part, and mainly these molecules are directly linked to stress tolerance, cold response, growth, and also aluminum present in the soil. So what we can see is that by looking at the phases of the expression patterns regarding cultivars associated to knockdown microRNAs, we can see that there are different growth patterns, and those small molecules has a big impact in the growth of the wheat during different time points that were observed. So those are type of examples in agriculture. And then since 4 years, we focus on precision livestock systems. So the applications of the principles and techniques of engineering could help in livestock monitoring to optimize the process by better managing the animal productions. So that will have the effect of reducing the impact on carbon, but also the effect of reducing all the management aspects that are burden for the farmers. So we are thinking that tools are the most appropriate way of improving the technology within, improving the management within the farms. So that will help improve animal health, animal welfare, and reproductions. And also by defining machine learning models, we can predict and early indicators that are associated to detecting anomalies that are present within the farms. So let's say those systems could rely mainly on 5 main steps. So mainly the first step is identify and classify the animal bioresponse and behavior and vocalizations. The second one will be mainly where us as machine learning and bioinformaticians we focus is developing new algorithms to model the target animal behavior, bioresponses. Then develop a great strategy for testing those models. Finally, use those models to monitor and provide feedback for management decisions. So these are the 4 main steps. And actually, to go towards those steps, what is important to notice that beyond using just the genomics, we should in those environments handle a heterogeneous type of data. One of the data that we are handling is sounds. So you can handle videos also to capture movements, anomalies within the cows, and use either classical machine learning models or most advanced technologies in machine learning to study each of the properties. However, what is going on is that the simpler the models are, the better we can use them to explain what is going on within the different data sources. So mainly, we developed set of decision trees, for instance, splitting the data sets to better understand what is going on within the environmental farms. And also, we developed tools that are machine learning based to do a kind of forecasting. So I will show some of the examples during the presentations. So in the precision livestock sectors, mainly that means we need to handle different type of equipment and data sources. So I talk about sound, I talk about images and videos. We have also accelerometers and activity detectors. And for instance, one can use image recognition, image classifications, and computer visions to highlight the movements within the cows. This is an example done by a company to monitor the movement of cows within a farm. So you can track the sounds and use the sounds to detect if there is a risk of misbehavior within the farm. Let's say there is an aggression or there is something bizarre that is happening within the farms. Okay. So with those equipment, we in our lab, what happened? We the industry, the Canadian dairy sectors are represented by different consortium, including the advisor services. They were collecting data the past 25 years on the animal conditions, including the genetics, the lineage, the behavior of those animals, and the environments that are associated, and the performance, so the productions aspect. So we have the three key elements of assessing P equals GNE. So the performance production equal the genetic plus the environment effect. And the objectives of all those things is to decide what is going on during the next phases, the next lactations. So if I use the data from the story of a cow, can I predict what's going on next year based on the herd, based on the environment, and based on genetics that are associated? So this data was collected around 6,000 farms, and they in total we have 1.4 million cows that are involved in 25 years of data. So taking just that small problem, I have the story of all the cows the last 25 years, including the genetics. Let's say today I have a cow. Can I predict what's going on next year? So that was the question we were faced 4 years ago. And with a group of scientists, we said, okay, this is easy. We can solve that within several few months. So what we started by saying, okay, look, all these data are out there. Can we use them? One of the major bottleneck was the data labeling and the data organizations. So the first step that our lab did is to harmonize those 25 years data sets by constructing what we call the dairy cattle portal ontology, which is the first Canadian ontology regarding the performance of cows and animals within Canada. And with that ontology that is that includes more than 6,000 classes, we have three main components that were grasped: the genetics, the nutrition, and the performance within the systems. So we have the three components. Then the next step was to, with different students, to design machine learning models. So taking deep learning techniques to try using time series approaches to predict data coming from the first lactation and predicting the next one. So this is the example of, a snapshot of the ontology that were developed. And can go on. And what we realize within the data sources, and that is released out there by other colleagues already, is that when you deal with the genetics and the environmental data to predict the upcoming performance, you are dealing within the four type of data that are present here. So either you have the cows that are within that farm has a strong genetics. So if they are well managed, they will perform well. So if they have a strong genetics, they have a bad genetics, and they are managed well, they will perform more or less well. If they have a good genetics and a good management, their performance will grow. So including the yield, the milk productions. And if the genetic is bad and it is bad managed, we are seeing a drop in the productions. So in the sector, I think there are colleagues here that work also on this data. What we realized that within the 25 years, there were a lot of genetical evaluations that were performed. And from those genetical evaluations, there were a lot of indicators that were built to capture different SNP effects. So the factor is that when we come to the P equal G plus the environment, we can see the performance led by the genetics. So if it is led by the genetics, we need to take into account three aspects of the genetics. So either it is additive, dominance, or it is a multi-complex trait. And we in our lab, we develop techniques to evaluate the effect of the genetics where the environment is the same. So we fixed a farm and we have a set of cows and we assess the performance. And this performance could help to estimate what is the effect of each gene, of the genetics of that cow. We can also assess the environment. Assessing the environment means that we have E that is different and G is fixed. So we have one genetics within several environments and we assess the effect of that environment. So there were studies that were showing that already if you take the same genetics within 2 hertz and you have a different management systems, what's going on is that you can have a really different production yields within the farms. So the two herds with the similar genetic background will give different performance, and that differences are linked to the health management, the management practices, including the nutrition, the food systems, and all the welfare status that are associated. So we propose, we address the P equals G plus E within four type of algorithms. So we define univariate models in time series just to capture, to snap what is going on within the productions. So we use the early lactations to predict the next one. Taking into account, we know the genetic backgrounds. Or we use a multi-inputs time series here, where we consider as inputs all the management practice, and we predict the profit within the next lactations also. So these are the four main schema that we were studying. So in the lab, we had several preliminary results in that directions. One of the results that we had on studying the predictive power of the genetics compared to the environments. So we estimate the effect of the genetics in predicting the next lactations. So that effect is around 22% of predictive power. And the remaining is led by the environment. And if you decide to extend that to second and third lactations, the effect becomes lesser, and the management takes over until a plateau that is around 18% that we have seen. So we also design deep learning techniques to predict the lactation performance. So we can predict accurately from the 1.4 million cows using, let's say, we took the data set from 2010 to 2013. We trained our models to predict 2014 and 2015. So we succeed predicting the lactation curves of those cows around 80%. So we have accurate prediction for 80% of the cows. I will show later what are the impacts of that results. So there are students working on predicting the health events that happen during the next lactation. So if the first 2 years a cow has no disease, and within that farm there are a set of conditions, other cows having disease or not, that is taken into account to predict what is the probability of the specific cow to be to have a disease within the next lactations. So that is important when people are deciding for replacements within the farm. So one major things that is affecting individuals within the farms is the locomotions. So the ability to walk. And we use computer visions to detect the lameness factors that are associated to cows. So we can detect that lameness using just computer vision around 85% of accuracy. So then we turn ourselves to say, look, we have developed machine learning techniques that estimate the effect of genetics for the next lactations. We know how to predict what's going on the next lactation. But with the data set that was collected the 25 years, can we assess what is the main factors that are driving the sustainability of the farms during that 25 years? So mainly what we highlight was welfare issues. So the management practice and welfare issues were clustered within using a self-organized map by one of our postdocs to highlight the type of misconditions, good welfare, bad welfare, that could either lead a farm to sustain or a farm to lose a set of cows and drop on profitability. So mainly we realized that there were three types of welfare status within the Canadian farms. The good managed that are more or less to sustain and not that we are confident to sustain. The red one that are more or less, and the green one that are less sustainable due to welfare issues. So an example here is in details, when we take a lactation curves and we take the inputs here, we predict what's going on during the next lactations. How we do that is to define those machine learning models that I just presented, including what we call in our lab mu. It's a multivariate machine learning that is based on LSTM to forecast for the next lactations. And the driver is not just predicting the next lactations, but when you predict, let's say, the next lactations with a reductions of productions, what is important for a decision maker like a scientist or a farmer is to understand what is the causes of that reductions. And what we have done in the lab is to use the ontology that we have developed to develop a set of tools that can help enrich several concepts that are associated to the management practice. So if you have a reductions or you have a risk of a disease, we can highlight within the ontology what are the patterns that are leading into that predictions. So mainly with mu, we have an accuracy that is around 90% actually on prediction side. So I can rephrase that in another way. Let's say if I have a farm, I have actually those numbers are true. You take a current farm and you use this model to predict the next lactations, and you use that model to decide the options of management within the farms 18 months prior of the upcoming decisions. What is happening is that you can reduce, you can increase the revenue or reduce the cost of the farm from $15,000 by choosing the best decisions. So those kind of estimations convince mainly different actors within the industry to say, hey, look, if you can predict, forecast those kind of tools, can it be efficient to be deployed within the Canadian system? Not just in historical data, but in the real-time data. So then we face the second paradigm. You have the tools, you have the models, you have the predictors. How could you deploy them? So deploying them means that you have within the farms a way of deploying the machine learning models that were developed, and you have the way of grasping the real-time data that are required to make that predictions. So the chair that we launched is focusing on that new paradigm. So a concrete example is that we have developed the lameness detection tools. So within the farm, for instance, I don't know if it will not play. There is no media here in this one, but you have a cow that is moving. You can extract what is the meaningful locomotions patterns, and from that locomotion patterns, you can predict what is called a gait score, so a locomotion score. So using the 1.4 million data that we collected and the trained models, we can extrapolate that locomotion score to a health risk indicator. So if you have that health risk indicator, could you deploy that within the farms? So we did a proof of concept of this, and we submitted a paper associated to it. And the results are convincing because you can predict that gait score around with an accuracy above 90% in most of the cases. So the problem of that we were now facing is we trained those models with a big data sets of 1.4 million cows. Considering those are in a big farm, the big data sets. However, the reality is different. So the Canadian farms, they have less than 60, between 60 to 300 cows per farm. So you cannot train any machine learning models within one farm. So you need to find a way of either using federated learning or a techniques to grasp all those data within a data hub that could help on designing the machine learning models. So, and we are facing in Canada that the farms are sparsely located. So they are dispersed within the country, and they are in environmental zones where the connectivity is really low and with limited computational capacity. And the margin of those farms is really low. Okay. So my team with El Salvador teams at McGill decided then to unite the effort on instead of trying to learn those models within the individual farms, we decided to go with a digital living lab approach, where we are equipping experimental farms, one at McGill here and another one in Ontario, with a set of the state-of-the-art sensors, cameras, accelerometers to capture the maximum type of information that are required, and to design all these steps associated to the deployment of such models. From these experimental farms, we can train the next generation's models that could be deployed within farms that are starting to have connectivity. So this is what we expect to do starting now and the upcoming years, is to deploy those technology within those two experimental farms, capturing within what we call in the digital living lab, highlighting what is the smallest data sources that are required to predict the next lactations or to predict the welfare status, and deploy that at scale in firms that are within the network here that are connected, and or using proxies data coming from different partners. So we are designing two scenarios. One is a single cow monitoring systems, and the other one is a herd scenario systems, where instead of assessing one cow, you assess multiple cows using the same type of feeds, video feeds and sounds coming. And for this, we are developing several other machine learning packages. I will not go in those details here, but just to highlight that we are designing dairy integrated data handling infrastructure. So that's could handle the non-intrusive remote sensors, hybrid computing infrastructure, and building a permanent data collection systems. So just to be sure, to clarify, the next step is not mine within the chair. It is the network part, because capturing that massive data will require to have a sophisticated data transfer infrastructure. So we are putting in place an animal mobility data transfer infrastructure using federated learning approach and non-invasive sensing. Okay. So the second work package is related to continuing developing the machine learning techniques for next lactation predictions. And the main challenges that we are facing is dealing with the multivariate time series, handling sequence that are coming from multiple dairy traits, and differentiating what is a long-term effect of an event happening in a farm compared to a short term. Actually, that part we already have a solutions, because we did a project that is called Resilience, where we detect the effects of an event during time, and those tools are already in there. So there is also a challenges on predicting the probability of an event to occur within time, and dealing with the uncertainty associated to capturing those events. And finally, this is the type of infrastructures we are providing within the chair to handle a better deployability systems within the Quebec and Ontario dairy systems. So we have a small team composed of research assistants, Nicolas Montigny, de Montigny, Karen, Thomas, that is data scientist, Ida, I think she's here, working on predicting the effect of event in the futures. Victor, who is leading the dairy cattle portal ontology, and several PhD students in different topics, including Amin, who is present here on variational inference. I think you will be presenting tomorrow. And Julie on the biomarker in wheat, Armand, and Vaid working on the framework for machine learning in dairy, and a lot of other students in different of the properties that we need to develop during the chair. So I would like to finish by here by acknowledging our founders, so Insert, Prompts, and the dairy sectors that funded the different works that I presented today, and also Genome Quebec and Genome Canada for funding to study the effect of genetics within the productions. So thank you.
Very interesting talk. I don't know if there are microphones in the room. round up. Okay, if you have questions, I have questions in the room.
Yes. So unfortunately, we don't have microphones, so we'll have to ask our questions. And for those online, we ask that we just repeat the question, if you don't mind, before you give an answer, just so that the people online know what the question is. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the wonderful talk, and it's really amazing. So from all the basic research to translation applications. So you mentioned about the small team, but that's a tremendous work. So one of my first questions is, what's the main challenge you perceive from research to the translation is the last part when you deploy? Because I feel it's quite time consuming, and especially given a farm, you need to change the model and how the acceptance of the local farmers and how it's being managed.
A really interesting thanks, Jeff, for that questions. So the question is how we are managing the farmer acceptance of the models that we are deploying, and what is the challenges we are facing on that aspect. Actually, the purpose of the Whaley Chair is because we realize that if we continue to develop machine learning models without working closer with the end user, they will never be deployed. So that is why we changed the paradigm and decided to work in a digital living lab where you have a vitrine. And that vitrine includes farmers. So meaning that the farmers, they are involved in the first step of designing the questions. And then they participate on interpreting the results based on how they perceive their environments. So that is the role of the digital living lab we are putting in place. And the excuse of doing that digital living lab, you face the same problem of connectivity, of data cleaning, data organizations, storage that the farmer will face if you decide to deploy such model within their farm. So we work on finding those answers for them. I didn't talk about one aspect that is really crucial of this work is the competitivity and the privacy of the data that are coming from the different farms. So within the digital living lab, actually we with one researcher here, we wrote a paper on recommending what are the most advanced data privacy compliance that are required within the farms. And we are following those rules in the deployment of the digital living lab systems. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did. The first one I didn't hear. Milk. Yeah, the milk. Yeah, definitely. Actually, we I simplify, not to go in details on the different parameters that we have. Actually, we within the data set we have the milk composition. So from the milk composition, you can capture the percentage of fat. You can count somatic cell counts and others. Everything, other parameters can be grasped from the milk. And the second one was, yeah, the epigenetics one is the most tricky. Actually, there is one ongoing project by Marc-André Sira, and now at the University of Laval, who is estimating the the epigenetic effect. So they are doing a lot of epigenetic epigenome sequencing.
So I have a follow-up of the question of Jeff actually about the application of the farmer. So in the model, I didn't understand well. So are there information from expert knowledge that are integrated in the model, and is it interactive? I mean, are the farmers able to interact with the tools?
Yeah, actually, the not just the farmer, the scientist also, because that is why first we decided to develop that ontology. So within the ontology, we capture the domain knowledge, and also we are pushing the expert knowledge within that ontology, so that most of the state-of-the-art knowledge is grasped there. But then that ontology is created by farmers and scientists in the domain. And also the machine learning models, when, let's say, you predict the next lactation and the lactation is decreasing, you extract what is the parameters that are associated to the decrease. We are receiving feedbacks from the dairy advisor saying, oh, look, that is associated to a drop of a somatic cell count, for instance, and that is predictable because the cow is going to the fourth lactation or fifth lactation. So that is something they know, and you don't have that as a prior knowledge, but that is something they know and they can transfer to you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about genetics, 22%, environment, 78%. How much of the environment factor is in control?
Is under control. I
How much, because 70, almost more than 70% of the environment account for the productivity.
Yeah.
How much environment is random? How much environment can control to improve it?
That is a nice question. We need yeah, because you need to assess what is the in that environment, because there are things that you can control. For instance, you can control the food, you can control several other aspects, but you cannot control the weather conditions, and you cannot control if there is a disease that are coming to the farm and other stuff. So I think we need to have a study dedicated to measuring that.
Yes, well, it was a very similar question to that, but I asked another one. So how do you, when you're doing these models, how can you partition genetic components, and do you do separate models for them, or you do it together? So do you use like reversibility methods?
Actually, we divided it in three studies, three different studies. The first one, we have designed just a model based on the genetics. That is based on mainly a SVM classifiers that were defined, and a random forest one that were defined by the team. And combining the environment, we have models just for the environment. And that model is based on an LSTM architecture. So we studied the environment using A time series models. And then when we combine both, we shoot the genetics as a initial variables within the LSTM models.
So is it the genetics themselves or the variables that you think, or is it a representation?
It is a representation of the variables based on mainly their genetic evaluations. So it's more complicated than that. So there is the genetics, and there is a genetic evaluations done for the performance, and it's the genetic evaluations that are embedded.
Okay, and the partition between genetics and environment, you measure it from the joint method or
From the joint. Thank you.
Still on this topic, so I was also wondering, so you say performance is actually the addition of the addition of the elements of genetics and environment, So are you considering also that there may be features that are unknown for now, maybe in addition to environment and genetics?
Actually, I should correct that, because if Marc-André Sirard was here in this room, he will say it's not P equals G and plus A, E, it's G, P equals G plus E plus the epigenetics.
Okay, interesting. So I have a last question to understand more how this is placed in the state of the art. So you talked about the case of Canada. So what is the worldwide state of the art? So how is it done in Europe, for instance? So
Actually, taking, let's say, the domain knowledge and the representations, we were approached by the International Consortium of Animal Recording for using our ontology as the ground foundations of the work within the domain. So there is a technical committee they are putting in place towards that directions. And on the aspect of predicting next lactations using advanced deep learning techniques, the methods that we are providing are leading to most of the state of the art. I'm really happy to announce that we do have ongoing collaborations on transferring the models that we are developing here in Europe, and also in South Africa and in Western Africa. Yeah, actually, the most of the algorithms that we develop are open source, and the frameworks is accessible on demand. Why we put it on demand? Because there are confidentiality of the data, so we need to make sure that the data is used properly.
thank you.